Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. We're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, but I would say this brewery are best known for their different kinds of lager beers these days, but they also do some very nice IPAs as well. But one of my favourite breweries here in Skåne, and one of the Swedish breweries that I would highly recommend that you check out. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases as of March 2022, and it is supposed to be quite nice actually. So it's a style that I know they can do pretty well as well, so I have to say I'm quite curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head down to Malmö, a little bit to the southwest of me here in Lund, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Hyllie Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this one is another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the local Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2022. And yeah, it was released alongside the Spring Pills, which I reviewed for you a few videos back. But I'm actually travelling to Scotland, so I wanted to get this one done because it's an IPA, and of course you want to drink these beers as fresh as you can. But yeah, let's crack on with it and see how we get on. Always nice to review the new beers from Hyllie Bryggeri. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hyllie Bryggeri in the past, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future because I do enjoy trying their new beers. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Hyllie Bryggeri once again then. So Hyllie Bryggeri, as I've told you before, started off as the homebrewing experimentations of Michael Nathorst, who is from Vintria, a few minutes to the south of Hyllie in the kind of southern part of Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. So for a number of years he was a home brewer, and he built up his own brewery in his garage where he experimented with brewing different kinds of beers with his friends, and he started brewing back in around 2013. But he's worked for a number of years in the plumbing industry, and for a period of time he was working 4 days as a plumber but also 1 day with the brewery, and he was good friends, or is good friends I should say, with Torsten Ekne, who is the original owner of Beer Ditch in Malmö, a bar that I definitely recommend that you check out. But when Beer Ditch began, Michael decided to turn his garage brewery into a proper brewery, and he registered Hyllie Bryggeri in 2015 as an official company, and much of this came because of Torsten's encouragement. But these days Michael is joined at the brewery by Erik Fritzihoff, who is a partner in the company, and he deals with the sales and marketing, but he is also one of the founders of the Great Swedish Beer Festival, so quite an experienced guy. But in 2019 the brewery joined forces with Psycho Pipes and Limhamns Brewery to form a new company that owned a brewery building, and the companies were brewing their beer together there for a little while. They had a 1,000 litre brew kit, but this arrangement unfortunately only lasted for a couple of months. I think there was conflicts with brewing schedules and all of this kind of thing, but Hyllie Bryggeri decided that they were going to move out to a farm in near Vintria, just to kind of brew on their own and be independent again. But over the course of 2020 they contract brewed a number of their beers, and they invested in a new premises in Malmö, which is very close to the central train station. It's a former car park, but this was converted into a fully functioning brewery. It's got a 2,000 litre brewing system, and they also have the tap room there as well, which is called Stormgatan, just named after the street in which it's located. But they also recruited at this point Johan Lagerkrantz to come in as their head brewer, and he'd spent 5 years working in the beer scene down in New Zealand, and yeah, I think that brewery has been up and running since early 2021, if I remember correctly. I forget exactly when they opened the tap room, but it's very close to the Central Railway Station in Malmö, as I say, so it's definitely worth going and checking out. I believe it opens Thursday to Sunday. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 95 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said to you, these guys are known mainly for their different kinds of IPAs, but also for their lager beers. These guys are one of the best lager producers in Sweden when it comes to the craft scene, in my opinion. So yeah, my two favourite beers from this brewery would be the Hyllie, the West Coast IPA, but I also really like the Skånsk Lager. The Skånsk Lager, if I was pushed to choose a favourite, Skånsk Lager would absolutely be my favourite from these guys. Just a beautiful, beautiful lager beer, actually. So yeah, if you're into your craft lagers, then Hyllie Bryggeri are one of the breweries that you definitely want to check out. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Hyllie Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is a wee bit different compared to what we've had from Hyllie Bryggeri in the past, but it is still pretty cool. You can see there is the Hyllie Bryggeri symbol on the top of the can there. Of course, that's the water tower, and you'll see that from the train when you go through Hyllie. It's the first stop when you come over from Copenhagen. And yeah, but really nicely presented. It's a 440 milliliter can. This one, I think I paid, I want to say 50 Swedish kronor for this, so that's about €5, about £4 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $6 American for those of you watching in different places. But yeah, as I said, released as part of the local småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2022. This one is hopped with Amarillo, Talus, Eldorado and Citra. We know all four of these hops fairly well. Talus, of course, is newer compared to the others, but they're all American. Amarillo's about 12% alpha acid. It will give you lovely kind of big, zesty, oily, orangey flavours. Talus, of course, is a slightly newer one. That's about 14 to 16% alpha acid. It gives you that big kind of pink, bright, grapefruity note, but also a little bit of coconut because it's derived from, oh, that hop's gone right out of my head now. Sabro, that's it, it's derived from Sabro. Eldorado's a little bit older as well, about 12% alpha acid. It gives you lovely kind of mango-y, pineapple-y notes, a little bit of passion fruit too, and Citra is the classic one, of course, 14% alpha acid, big mango notes, and quite a lemony, zesty character as well when you put it into New England IPAs, of course. But yeah, let's crack this guy open and see how we go on. Every cloud has a silver lining, a 6.5% New England hazy IPA from Hyllie Bryggeri. Let's do this. Yeah, when I was in Stormgatan a couple of weeks ago, this one was on tap. So this beer, I think, has been out, or it has been on keg at least, for a little while. So the can release, of course, coming just a little bit after the tap release. I think it's been in a few bars around Malmö, of course. It'll be in Tap Room and Stormgatan and all of these kind of places. But yeah, it certainly should be very nice. So anyway, as you can see, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect for a New England hazy IPA. So in terms of the head on this one before it disappears, I would say it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head there. You can see it's got some big bubbles and a few smaller ones toward the bottom of the head there, but that head is going to fade away to a nice kind of thin foamy layer. The colour of this one, I think, is a very deep yellow, very slightly amber colour actually. But yeah, I like comparing them to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance of New England IPAs remind me of. So yeah, this one is very much like a kind of you know, mango mixed, yeah, maybe like kind of mango, maybe pineapple, mango and passion fruit juice, something like that. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts that you put in, will also play a role in that, but you don't have to care about these variables normally when it comes to a New England IPA. One thing I will say about this beer as well, though, is that for a 6.5%er, it does have an impressive level of haze to it. So remember, the level of haze in these New England IPAs depends on the oat content and the wheat content, but also the yeast as well. This can vary from brewery to brewery and recipe to recipe, so there's no rule relating the ABV to the level of haze that you get out of the beer, or an unwritten rule as it would be. But yeah, this one for a 6.5%er is kind of impressive with its haze level, and it does contain both wheat and oats, this one. So yeah, it should be pretty nice. But yeah, in terms of appearance, nothing overly surprising about this. One or two big bubbles in there and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, which has incidentally just faded away to be a very thin foamy layer now. But I think we can take a look at the aroma now. Nothing else to do with appearance. So, aroma time. Oh yeah, that is very nice. First impression of this one, it's actually quite soft and bread crusty, absolutely. But it does have a nice kind of white bready character to it. The green component for me is leaning toward the floral side of things, but the fruity juicy side of this beer is quite bright and actually slightly oily in a sense. So I really like how that side of this beer goes together. It gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, I really like I really like how this one is going about its business in that regard. But let's break the aroma down for you and describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth actually. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, absolutely, it's kind of I would say it's got a little bit of that typical kind of white bread crusty sort of character to it. That's forming the backbone of the beer. Absolutely. You do get a wee bit of you do get a nice kind of, you can smell the kind of fresh white bread on top of that, and that's coming from the barley malt. Of course, you get that soft, fluffy, white bready character coming out of this beer, so that gets a big thumbs up from me as well. But you can smell the wheat in this one. There is a bit of a wheaty, bitey character in the back of the nose. You can smell that, but you can also smell that the wheat is thickening up. You can also smell that the wheat is kind of thickening up the bready character in this one as well. So yeah, this one goes together quite nicely in that sense. I don't find the oats to be overly prominent. You can smell a little bit of smoothness from the oaty character in this one. And one thing I've always told you in these reviews as well, for me the oats are an indicator of how fresh your beer is going to be. The younger the New England IPA is, the more kind of creamy the oats will come across, but the older it is, you get a bit more dryness and things out of it. So you can smell with this one, it's kind of, you can smell a nice creaminess to it, but you are starting to get little hints of a kind of slight dryness out of the oats as well. So that is worth bearing in mind. That one is worth bearing in mind with this beer actually. But yeah, aroma wise, this one I think is pretty nice in that sense. I don't get much in the way of an element of sweetness to this one from the malty base. It does have this strikes me as being a little bit more kind of old school, like 2015, 2016-ish in its malt base and age. When we think about the Narangi, the Amazing Haze, the New Sweden, these kind of sort of things, it really reminds me of a bit of a slightly more old school New England IPA, just from how it smells. There's not really a biscuity or I don't get really a biscuity or a kind of sweet element out of it. There's a teeny wee hint of biscuit. Now that I've said that, I've suggested it to myself, so I think it's there. But yeah, this New England IPA is certainly not big and sweet as you'll get from some of them. But like I say, there's 6 different elements I think you need to think about with New England IPAs. The sort of yeasty, farmhousey character and the rye leaning grainy character, those are more prominent in American brewed ones. But then you've got wheatiness, oatiness, the kind of barley malt breadiness, and also some sweetness there. And those 4 elements are a little bit more common in the European ones. I think most of the New England IPAs we have over here in Europe are derived from, the Treehouse oaty ones and the kind of Trillium, the sort of Trillium wheaty bitey ones. But yeah, the malt base on this one is quite nice. I do get a little bit of a slightly kind of crackery note to it as well, but yeah, it certainly works. I do like how this goes together. Yeah, aroma wise, this is quite nice, I have to say. So the malty base in this one does get a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like how I do like how that goes together on it, so thumbs up, absolutely. Yeah, the hoppy side of things then, let's look at the green component first. So, like I said earlier, for me, the green component to this one really leans towards quite a bright but also quite wet floral character. There is a wee tiny touch of earthiness to this one, but that really takes a back seat to the kind of more grassy and floral notes. So wee teeny little hint of earthiness in there. Remember, New England IPAs tend to rely on early edition hopping and late edition hopping. It's early edition hopping that is the one that gives you. Sorry, I've said that wrong. Yeah, New England IPAs rely on late edition hopping and dry hopping, whereas early edition hopping is used as well as those two in West Coast IPAs. That gives you a lot of the bitterness. So New England's, I don't think, have as big a green component aroma wise as West Coasters used to. At least West Coast have changed a little bit to be less hoppy and bitter because of New England IPAs. But yeah, this one for me, the green component has got a nice bright but slightly wet and slightly deep floral aromaticity, a nice wee bit of grassiness in there as well. But yeah, the green component in this one, I think goes together pretty well, I have to say. So yeah, aroma wise, that is quite nice. The fruity side of this beer, though, I think is where the really interesting part of the beer lays. So for me, if I take this aroma in a bit deeply, you can get little hints of that pink grapefruit from the talus. Absolutely, you can smell that at the back. But to me, the pink grapefruit's actually quite wet and juicy in some ways, and it kind of sits. You can smell there's a wee bit of a the mango and sort of pineapple, apricot sort of stuff coming out of the Citra and the El Dorado, but there's just this wet pink grapefruity note there, but it's not madly pungent. Usually with Talus, I find that pink grapefruity thing can be quite pungent, but also very bright. In this beer, it's coming out as being a little bit more juicy. So that's interesting as well. Actually, I like it when you start to learn about different kind of properties of hops, if that at all makes sense. But yeah, aroma wise, this beer, I think is very nice in that sense. So yeah, it works. It certainly works for me on that. Yeah, I do get a nice bit of orangey, oily character from the Amarillo in this one as well. But it's yeah, the Amarillo in this one is, again, it feels a little bit more juicy. So it's interesting. Just the overall vibe of the fruit from this beer is kind of juicy. But yeah, when you focus on the orange, it does feel a little bit more oily. And as I've always said, Amarillo for me has always been a very oily, zesty, orangey character. But yeah, when you sugar it up a little bit, you do get more of that kind of oily, orangey thing. But you can also smell a wee bit of the kind of more zesty, like lemony, limey, grassy character of the Citra as well. But yeah, it's quite. The interesting thing is just how juicy the Amarillo and the Talus are coming out as being in this beer. So I think the Talus and the Amarillo sort of take the lead in this one, but the Citra and the El Dorado are kind of forming a slightly softer tropical backbone in there. So yeah, pink grapefruit, juicy pink grapefruit, definitely a wee bit of a kind of smooth mango and apricot-y, pineapple-y sort of thing, but then also a nice oily orange as well. So yeah, I like how that goes together. I think this is going to be quite interesting, but let's have a taste of it and see how it goes. I always say, though, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, let's get stuck in. So yeah, this one is the Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining, 6.5% New England Hazy IPA from Hyllie Bryggeri in Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Slanja, skål, cheers. So, yeah, that's pretty nice actually. It is, as I was saying earlier, it's actually it's a more old school New England IPA. This one, I think, this one has the sort of the amazing haze. Just on first impression, it has a little bit more of the amazing haze, Narangi, New Sweden, kind of that bready kind of dryness to it. Actually, it's not the creamiest of New England IPAs, so that's quite interesting for me. Yeah, I do like how this. I like how this goes about its business. Actually, it works. Yeah. So, where do we start with this one then? This is quite interesting. So yeah, like I said, this is quite a to me. This is quite a barley malt bready leaning New England IPA. It's got a little. It has a fair little bit of wheaty character to it as well. But yeah, quite a smooth bready malt base to it. The hoppy character is it has a fair green component to it, and the fruity notes are quite light as well. So yeah. This is quite different actually from what we've had from Hyllie Bryggeri in the past, so it's worth trying. It is worth trying this one. Yeah. So let's break this down for you and describe the beer more in depth as we always do. So middle third of your palate, then you can feel the base of that kind of middle third of your palate. You get that typical sort of white bready, bread crusty sort of thing with like a kind of fresh hedgehog roll. Almost, this one actually feels as if it almost has a little bit of the kind of flour on it. You know, you get the flour from the freshly baked bread. On top of that though, you get the kind of soft and puffy, you get the soft and kind of puffy white bread from the barley malt, and that goes together really, pardon me, really quite well. So, I think on top of that, you can feel there is a bit of a wheaty layer there, and it's interesting because the wheat feels a little bit more grainy. It actually reminds me of like spelt. The wheaty character you get out of this one really reminds me a little bit of that old kind of spelt wheat that you can get from Germany. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a quirky feature of this beer, I have to say. Yeah, the malty base in this one, as I say, the whole vibe of this New England IPA is really akin to what we had when you know the New England IPAs first kind of hit Sweden back in sort of 2015, 2016. Yeah, I do like how that I really do like how that goes together actually. But yeah, the on top of that kind of, as I say, on top of that soft barley malt bready there, you can feel there is a bit of a wheaty character there that kind of thickens out. It thickens out the wheaty. It thickens out the kind of the bready side of the beer, but then on top of that, you can feel that the oats are there and they thicken it out even more actually. But the oats are very smooth, but I do actually get a wee bit of dryness. So when you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel that the oats are a little bit more dense. They almost give you a wee bit of that kind of slightly oatmealy type vibe that you can get. So I'm getting a bit of that slightly oatmealy thing down the middle of the palate, and as you spread out toward the edges of the palate, I think it's got a little bit more dryness to its oaty character. So that's interesting as well. But yeah, as I say, this beer in the malt base, it actually does have a good little bit of just dryness to it, which I'm finding. It's almost, the further you go into the aftertaste with it as well, you start to get this kind of sort of grainy, crackery type vibe just pushing its way up from the base of the beer. So yeah, you've got the bread crust with the kind of floury notes, the kind of fluffy white bready character there. You've got the wheat malt on top of that, and the wheat, as I say, has a bit of this kind of spelty, grainy character to it. You get the oats there. The oats have this little bit of an oatmeal thing in the middle, then they get drier as you go further out. And then yeah, you get this kind of crackery, dry kind of crackery, grainy vibe pushing out the beer the further you go into the aftertaste with it as well. So that is pretty interesting too, I have to say. So yeah, malty base on this one is pretty interesting. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then and see how the yeast comes into play with this one. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that bready build up there. The bread crusty character gets a little bit more pungent and a little bit more grainy in a sense the further back that you go. But yeah, on top of that, you have you do get that kind of thicker you get a thicker kind of white bready note out of it, but again it's a little bit more kind of grainy and stuff. But as I say, you know, the further back on the palate you go, the more bitter and grainy flavours are going to get. Your sweeter flavours always come out further forward on the palate. So yeah, that white bready barley malt layer feels a bit thicker. You can also feel that the wheat coming into the back third of the palate is a little bit more kind of bitey, if you like. But as I say, it has this really grainy vibe to it. It's almost a little bit like spelt malt, as I've said. But then on top of that, you're getting the yeasty notes out of this one. So let's focus on that yeasty part of the beer. Yeah. Yeah. That, yeah, the yeasty. Yeah, the yeasty part of the beer for me is quite interesting. It's actually quite a dry yeasty character you get out of this as well. So it feels like a really thick, dense, almost like a kind of stale, actually, almost like a slightly kind of stale white bready character that you get from it. It has one or two, it's got a little bit of a kind of dry, grainy edge to it. It's got a wee bit of a crackery sort of vibe as well. And yeah, it's got a little bit of a crackery, woody sort of thing. So yeah, the way that that goes about its business too is also very, very interesting. But yeah, on the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is slightly taller, and then as you come further forward and go into the middle third of your palate, it just condenses down a wee bit and squashes together actually. So yeah, the way that the malty character goes about its business in this beer is pretty interesting. I do like that, I have to say. Yeah, it's an interesting beer, this one. This is different from the New Englands we've had in the past from Hyllie, and it is a little bit kind of more dry and grainy in a sense, and almost like crackery, like Jacob's cream cracker. That's really what I kind of get out of this one. So yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. Just noticed something on the side here. Oh, it says it's vegan friendly. I just wondered if that might have been like organic malt, because I thought, oh, maybe that would explain why this beer's a little bit more kind of that would maybe explain why it's a little bit more kind of dry and grainy. It's kind of, I've had a few organic beers in Germany, of course, and the malt always tasted a bit different. But and the same with Black Isle Brewery back home in Scotland too. They had their own organic malt that they grew, and it just tasted a bit different. But yeah, that covers the malty, yeasty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things. So back corners of the palate, you've got a wee bit of earthiness in there, absolutely. As you come further forward, you get a little bit of a herbal character, and that's kind of in keeping with the more sort of grainy vibe that this beer has. But as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, you get that nice kind of floral, aromatic sort of vibe out of it. And again, it works really well. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's a bit lighter and grassy, and you do get a wee bit of a zesty kind of grassiness to it. So I think that's mainly going to come from the Citra, but Talus, I think, can give you a wee bit of that too. Yeah. So interesting. Let's focus on the fruity side of the beer then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there, a wee bit of bread crust. Then the base of the front third of the palate is a little bit more kind of it has a bit of that kind of smooth white bready sort of vibe to it as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. Absolutely. Yeah, so as I say, a little bit of a bread crusty base. I think the wheaty character you can feel on that front third of the palate. The wheat is actually sorry, the wheaty and the oaty character there feels a little bit smoother and a bit sweeter actually. So I think the oats and the wheat are forming a little bit of a base on top of that too in the front third of your palate. But on top of all that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. So at the back of that front 30 palate, yeah, you get that nice pink grapefruity character from the Talus. The fruity character in this one is kind of similar to what we were picking up in the overall aroma. So you get that nice kind of pungent but quite bright pink grapefruity character out of this beer, and that sits there on the back of the that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward, you can feel that the pungency kind of spreads forward underneath, but you do start to get a little bit of a lighter mango-y note and a wee bit of a lighter mango-y note and a wee bit of a pineapple-y sort of thing as well. But yeah, then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's interesting because I don't get that much orange out of this beer. I was expecting more. You do get a wee bit of that oily orange from the Amarillo the further into the beer that you go, but I think the kind of zestier side of the Citra is actually showing itself up a little bit more, like toward the front tip of the palate. I think it's got a wee bit of a more kind of pungent, limey sort of vibe to it. So that's worth bearing in mind too. Yeah, but in fairness, the thing is, the more that you drink of it and the further into the aftertaste that you go, you will get a wee bit more of that kind of smooth, pineapple-y, apricot-y type vibe, which will be the Eldorado and to a degree the Citra as well. But yeah, I think the pink grapefruit is there. The thing is, we have to remember as well is that Citra is also going to give you a bit of that more pungent passion fruit and grapefruit, so that's probably promoting it a little bit. But yeah, the fruit, the overall vibe of this beer is it's really quite a bready, barley malt leaning New England IPA. This one is a bit more old school, as I say, Amazing Haze, Narangi, New Sweden. It's really kind of like those, but a bit drier and a bit more grainy in a sense. So yeah, this is an interesting beer. It's one that's made me think, and I like after 3,200 beers, I like ones that make me think a wee bit. So that's always good. But yeah, interesting beer from Hyllie. So thumbs up to them for that. Yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then to round off this review. So for me, this beer is quite yeah, I would say that this beer, it's mid-bodied, but I think it's actually pushing towards the lighter end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth. It's actually got quite a wet mouthfeel to it, this one, in comparison. But the malty side of things, as I've said, it's got a bit of a dry, kind of grainy, but slightly smooth vibe to it as well. Maybe a bit of wheaty bitiness, like I've said. But yeah, I wonder if it's spelt malt in this. I really do wonder if there's a bit of spelt malt in this one. But yeah, it really has that sort of dry, grainy type vibe to it, which is interesting. It reminds me a wee bit, when I think about it, it actually reminds me a wee bit of some of the kind of Alchemist New England IPAs from over in the States, because those ones are a little bit more, I think it's rye they put in those, and they're a bit more farmhousey. So this one's a little bit like that, actually, come to think of it. So yeah, not the sweetest of malt bases, a bit more grainy and things. The hoppy character is a wee bit more floral leaning, but I'd say you've got about 30, 40 IBUs in this one. It might be slightly more bitter than that. Maybe, I think it could be 40 to 50 IBUs, but that might be a push. But then you also have a really nice kind of juicy fruity character to it. The fruity character in this one is quite nice, but just not what I was really expecting. But overall, it's a nice beer and it's interesting. I like beers that make me think about them a little bit, and this one has done that actually. So yeah, thumbs up to Hyllie Bryggeri for doing something a wee bit different. Is it my favourite New England IPA I've had from that? I wouldn't say so. I think some of I forget the ones that we had. There was a couple of ones that we had a few videos ago that were very, very good. This one's a wee bit different though, so if you're into a more kind of farmhousey type New England IPA, this one will be right up your street. But solid enough beer. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that with this one. So yeah, this was the Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining, 6.5% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Hyllie Bryggeri. From Hyllie Bryggeri in Malmö and Skåne here in the south of Sweden. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hyllie Bryggeri as well, and we will return to these guys again at some point soon. But thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Hyllie Bryggeri's social media, and I will see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.